everybody. Welcome to the March 5th board meeting. If I could ask you all to please stand for the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Adequate notice of this meeting in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, has been provided by action of the Board of Education on January 3rd, 2019. Notice has been provided to the two newspapers circulated in the school district and a posted notice to this effect on the Board of Education Building Bulletin Board, Administrative Headquarters, 51 West Cliff Street, Somerville, New Jersey. Mr. Boyce, can we have roll call, please?
Miss Matthews.
Here.
Mr. Carlson.
Here.
Mrs. Olson.
Here.
Mr. Puntillo.
Here.
Dr. Sadin.
Here.
Mrs. Schweitzer.
Here.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Here.
Mr. Sergio.
Present.
Mr. Jess.
Here.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Here.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open up the meeting for public comment on agenda items. All right, may I have a motion to close the public portion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Shugiel. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Sadin, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. All right, moving on to the board president's report. At this time, I'd like to offer condolences on behalf of the board to the following people who lost a member of their family over the past month. Kathy Hans, a cousin. Claudine O'Brien, a brother-in-law. Kermit Weiss, an aunt. Karen Stevenson, an aunt. Laura Manzano, an uncle. Georgette Boljuris, an uncle. Elaine Cochran, an aunt. Natalie Franzi, her grandmother. And Patricia Clark, her brother.
All our best to their families.
And that's it for me. Dr. T?
All right, today we're going to be starting off with our food waste in the cafeteria, the PBL, or problem-based learning presentation.
You'll keep going all the way up, guys. They're a little afraid.
They're a little nervous.
Welcome, everybody. How are you? We need some smiles. We're not going to bite you, so we need some smiles. Remember, you're going to be on TV, too, so we need everybody to smile, all right? Make sure you give us a great presentation, so we know you will, all right? Ready when you are.
Okay. Brandon, introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Brandon Gray.
I'm AJ Falcon. I'm Riley Sorno. I'm Abby Gallagher. I'm Angie Rivera. I'm Maya Smith. I'm Mara Tessa. I'm Sydney Webster. I'm Brandon Thompson.
Welcome.
Problem-based learning theories. My 6th grade class of 2018-2019. What is food waste? Food waste is food that gets discarded and thrown away due to deformities, spoilage, and portion sizes. Throwing away food is a huge problem in the U.S. It happens when people don't like food, don't like the way it looks, or the way it tastes. Food waste is a major problem all around the world. When we waste food, we hurt our environment in many ways.
Did you know that the amount of food wasted each year could fill a football stadium?
Did you know that an estimated $218 billion each year is wasted because of food waste in America?
Lastly, did you know an American family of four spends $1,600 annually on food that is never eaten? And in 6 years, that family has wasted a college tuition to in-state public college. Right there is a percentage chart that shows the amount of things that get wasted. The top 3 are food waste, paper waste, and package food.
Food waste in homes. At home during dinner, kids waste food. This is usually because of these things. Kids are being picky and don't want to eat the food that is made. Parents buy things at the supermarket and don't finish it, especially food that is frozen seafood. Lastly, at parties, people don't eat and finish food. It turns into leftovers. These are some things that go into food waste.
Packed lunches. Mothers, fathers, and guardians don't realize how much food that is thrown away. Usually, kids throw it away because of the way it looks or smells. Some ways to resolve this are making the foods look appetizing, making foods that kids will enjoy, separating foods so the taste does not mix together.
Food waste at SMS. Over a period of 2 days, the 6th grade students collected data in the cafeteria on food waste. Students were also given a lunch survey regarding school lunches. The following data was collected.
Our school students have some different opinions on the food the cafeteria sells. The following data we collected says that 22% of the kids like the food, but also 22% says they don't like the food. The amount of people that eat all of their food is 40%, and the people who don't are 22%. Out of 9 people, 4 said that they would throw out their snacks, and 5 people said they would keep them. Most people have pizza for lunch. Other kids bring from home, and some students get swap outs. Swap outs are alternatives to the hot lunch like hamburgers and pizza. We found most people buy swap outs from hot lunch. Students do this because hot lunch is, according to one participant, the school lunches are not good. Most students that buy lunch every day think that we should have more fresh ingredients. In personal interviews, we found that many people still buy hot lunch and throw out most of it out because they think it doesn't taste good. This creates more food waste.
We found that the main reason for the SMS waste food is that there is not enough time to eat. We have 25 minutes, and we often know we should have at least 30 minutes. Without enough time, kids end up throwing their lunches away. Other reasons for food waste include students did not like the taste, and often the food is cold and or salty. The students don't know what the lunch is going to be. The menu is difficult to find and end up buying lunch they don't like and then throw it away, and not enough variety of salad dressings.
Survey questions. The following data was collected through the surveys. Lunch slides. When we collected the data from the survey, we found that 37.5% of people throw out their sides. We think that they do this because the kids said in the survey that they think that the sides aren't satisfactory.
Salad dressing. Students say that if there was a greater variety of salad dressings, they would eat their salad. Some suggestions include Italian, Caesar, and Dalmatian. If we added to the selection of dressings, then students would eat more salad, therefore they would be healthier.
The school even provides salad dressings and more variety of salad dressings is only provided for the teachers. Simple solutions to food problem at Essence. More variety of salad dressings. Post the menu outside the cafeteria in Spanish. Get more fresh ingredients at a water station. More time to eat. Compost the wasted food and use it in the school garden. Add recycling bins to the cafeteria. Create a smoothie station using the leftover food.
We would like to put recycling bins and compost piles by every trash can in the cafeteria because we need to start recycling. The reason we are planning on doing this is because people don't recycle. Recycling bins that are clearly labeled and taller would help encourage recycling. People would like to start composting because it's better for the environment. When you throw out your food, it gets thrown into dumpster to rot. When you put it in a compost pile, it is given back to the environment as fertilizer. We could then use this to put in the garden. Any excess compost could be stored outside the garden.
We've come up with many labels to put above the compost pile. This is how it would look above on the wall with the compost, recycling, and garbage. This could be the day selection that we've created so that the students know what the lunch is going to be for the day. And in Spanish, so that students who don't speak English can understand what lunch is going to be. And a menu in Spanish, once again, so that the students understand what lunch is going to be.
I made a map of the cafeteria. As you can see, the green squares are compost, the blue squares squares are recycling, the red squares are garbage. And the purple lines at the top of the giant rectangles are doors.
We can and should make these changes from now to little to no money. In fact, just this week, a bill A4075 passed the New Jersey Assembly establishing a task force whose purpose is to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, how would
Adding a water station to the cafeteria aid in reducing food waste? Oh, you can answer.
Right now, their water doesn't pay for it. So if we add a water station that you can refill like a water bottle, then students will not, because you have to pay for it and you will drink. So then the students could get like water instead of like drinking every time. And then that they would be thirsty, so that they're thirsty.
For the compost bins, I created, what's it called, a blueprint almost, just so, I don't know, like,
He has an idea for a compost bin that he could actually share with. If you'd like to discuss it further with him, he has a whole plan.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much. Oh, who would be doing the composting?
Who will be collecting the composting?
I don't know, maybe the janitors?
No.
Good answer.
The kids. Yeah? Good question. All right. Thank you.
Great job.
Next up, we have the Somerville Middle School highlights.
It's always a special night to be able to highlight and celebrate Somerville Middle School. My name is Judge Bulger, I'm the principal of the middle school. This is Cruz, Lonnie Crusoe is the assistant principal of the middle school, but we don't do the highlights. Those of you that have had children go through the middle school the last 10 years know that when it's middle school highlights, it's all about the kids and it's their job. Our student council, it's my pleasure to introduce the student council executive board who will present the middle school highlights. Enjoy the presentation.
Here are the student council officers. This is Jaden Kimmick, the treasurer. This is Kelly, vice president, and I am Janet Finger. We are here today to present the Somerville Middle School highlights presentation. Basically, we are here to tell you that the Somerville Middle School is a great place to live. Here at SMS, teachers, deans, and administration work hard to help us, the students, achieve the goals.
Every day at SMS, students work hard to succeed. Students are actively involved in discussions and work that goes on in the classroom. Teachers, on the other hand, plan engaging lessons for students, so students are excited to go to class. They help students learn and understand different materials. Teachers also make students feel comfortable and appreciated. Together, we create a community where everyone is able to learn, succeed, and grow. Here at Somerville Middle School, our sense of community and our opportunities to learn extend beyond the classroom. At school, students are given the chance to join many different clubs and sports teams. We're also given the chance to take part in a lot of different events. For example, big events such as school dances and field days. Every month we have small fun events like Patrick's Tournament, Game Night, Relay to Life, a custodian thank you party, bake sales, coat drives, and many more.
Students respect each other and their belongings. Being respectful and responsible are two words that are highly influenced by our students and staff. Administration like Principal Jared and Ms. Caruso, along with the teachers, encourage all of the students at SES to get a good education. Finally, at Summer Middle School, everyone is thankful for their peers, students,
We have created a slideshow that we want to share with you. We hope it gives you a sense of how great our school community is and what it's like to be a part of our Somerville Middle School program.
saw this for the first time yesterday at a staff meeting, because I give the kids a charge and I want to see from their perspective, what do they think about the school? How do they see the school? I hear rumors and everything like that from adults, but I needed to know exactly what the kids felt and how they see what's going on in the school. So I had them do the dry run in front of the staff at the faculty meeting. And it was a good move. It was a smart move because it reminded the teachers too, from the students' perspective, how safe, how secure, and how welcome they feel in our school. And I think these three deserve a round of applause because they did it. Tonight you saw 6th graders, 7th graders, and then if you saw the 8th graders, you'd be looking up. It's amazing how much they change in 3 short years. The change is also physical as well as mental and emotional. We embrace a lot of flexible seating this year, which helps with the kids, especially when they don't feel comfortable in their bodies and on desks, if they can flop into a beanbag chair. I hope that that continues in the future because I think it helps our kids to have a comfortable spot so that they'll be open to learning even more, because you have to be comfortable to be able to take in the information and be challenged to do that higher order thinking. On behalf of the children, the staff, that I appreciate that we're here to support the kids, and the entire school community, I thank you for your continued support of the middle school. And please do so in the future. Thank you.
Down to district highlights for Vanderveer Preschool to Grade 2. Vanderveer music teacher Patty Helwig and coding teacher Charlene Packvick presented Beats and Bytes, Creating Music with Coding at the annual NJ Music Education Association Conference. The participants loved it, and the women were approached to provide more workshops. Vanderveer was a zoo the week of February 25th in preparation for the Read Across America celebration on March 1st with the theme of If I Ran the Zoo. Each hallway was decorated to reflect different sections of the zoo. A video of community members was shared, and Mr. Reevy and Mrs. Moran read a story to the students each day with a different theme to excite the students. On Friday, March 1st, over 40 community members joined the Vanderveer community to read to the students. A great week indeed. And if you've seen the very ending, where Mr. Reevy jumped in the air into and landed in a split. I think he's still stuck. For Vanderveer grades 3 to 5, on Saturday, February 23rd, Mrs. Lavey and students from her 3rd grade class presented donations of various pet food and supplies to the Somerset Regional Animal Shelter. This was the culmination of a service project the students planned, organized, and managed over several weeks under Mrs. Lavey's supervision. The 5th grade students and teachers were presented with their own private viewing of the movie documentary Screenagers, Growing Up in the Digital Age, on February 26th in the multipurpose room. This documentary dives deep into how technology impacts kids' development and the challenges of parenting in the digital world. Teachers held discussions in class prior to seeing the movie and then continued the discussions after the students viewed the film. Students shared some of their own screen-based goals, including going online socially after all homework is completed. Thank you to Mrs. McEntee for her assistance in coordinating this program. For Somerville Middle School, their winter athletic teams had their end-of-season celebrations where they reflected on their accomplishments and standout performances throughout the season. Their cast and crew for Guys and Dolls are getting ready for their production to be held on March 29th and March 30th. And the Winter Student Council Dance is scheduled for Friday, March 15th. The Student Council is planning a great event. For Somerville High School, on February 21st and 28th, Mr. Cadonius and his engineering students visited Somerville Middle School and Branchburg Central Middle School to highlight their projects and to promote the engineering elective courses at SHS. On February 23rd, Ville teachers did their part to raise money for Special Olympics by participating in the annual Polar Bear Plunge in Seaside Heights. Thank you to all staff for representing the Ville in this great cause. Collectively, they raised $21,763, and that is on top of the over $100,000 they've raised over the years. And congratulations to the cast and crew of this year's drama production of Pippin. Performances were held on February 28th, March 1st, and March 2nd. It was another great production by our talented students. Also, thank you to Director Christy Terranova and her staff for all their hard work and long hours of preparation for this event. And that concludes district highlights. And we're going to move on to our Somerville Board of Education Ethics Training and Superintendent Evaluation with Gwen Thornton from the New Jersey School Boards Association.
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to see all of you. I've given you a copy of the booklet that we developed that is devoted to the new online superintendent evaluation process. For those of you who have been board members for more than a year, you will of course recognize that this version is different than in past years. For those of you who are brand new, there is nothing extraordinarily unusual about this, other than it is probably new in its totality to you. If you just give me one quick moment. Those of you who I have not met, but I think I've met most of you, I'm Gwen Thornton. I'm a field service rep serving Somerset County, Hunterdon County, and Union County. This is my 15th year of service to the association, and 100 years ago BC, that would be before my children, not really BC. I was a school board member in Bridgewater, Raritan for about a decade. So it's a pleasure to be here this evening, and I just wanted to take a few moments to just review the evaluation process, to talk about the tools. As an ethics reminder for any of you that may have a family member employed in the district, you are conflicted out of participation in the superintendent evaluation, but absent that, you should all be able and should indeed participate in this process. It is one of your statutory responsibilities under 18A 17-20.3. It calls upon the Board of Education to do an annual evaluation, and that you will work with your superintendent to review the outcomes of the evaluation process. And the state requires through statute that it be based upon progress toward achievement of your district goals. Every school district has specific goals that you're required to work on, and then any other criteria that are outlined by the State Board of Education. So your annual performance report of your superintendent must be completed by July the 1st. I mentioned that date, and I just would like to reiterate to you how important that date is. This year, the superintendent evaluation counts for 13 points in New Jersey CUSAC, with the revision of the accountability regulations that was designed to streamline the district performance review areas in the 5 areas. We went from 5 indicators in governance to 12. That is the state's idea of streamlining the process. So you can see there, that's funny, you can see there that you're required to do this annually, to have a policy that talks about it, to be trained within the first 60 days of your board service, and then you get another 6 points for completing it in a timely way. So please make sure that you do that. You don't want to find yourself losing 13 points off your district performance report and governance because of a deadline. Okay? This really is the method by which you hold your district accountable for performance. That is by holding the superintendent accountable. The Board of Education has one employee, that's the superintendent. He or she then holds all other staff members accountable for their performance. So it's really a way of measuring the progress that's been made in your district over the course of the year. But more importantly, it's an effective communication tool to ensure that the board and the superintendent remain on the same page. So it's really looking at where were we last year, where are we this year, what we have achieved, and then looking at what else do we need to do additionally to move the district forward. So it's a way of having that conversation. This particular tool we're very excited about because it allows an opportunity for superintendents to include documentation right in the evaluation format itself, that when you go in as a board member, you will be able to click on those links and to see the evidence that your superintendent has provided for each of the areas within the superintendent's evaluation. That's new. I know that when I was a board member, it's hard to remember what you did in July of last year all the way to, April or May of this year. And so by allowing those links to be in there, If you cannot recall, then you can just click on that link and you'll be able to see the evidence, which I think is really very helpful. It also provides room for comments, both by the board and by the superintendent in every one of those indicators. So again, I would encourage all of you to do it very thoughtfully and very carefully. If you're going to say that someone's doing an outstanding job, truly skills are transferable, so please take the time to say why. And again, if there's an area of concern, I would heartily encourage you to be specific about what your concern is. I've never met a superintendent now doing this for 15 years and being a board member for another 10. So in 25 years, I've really never worked with a superintendent who did not want to meet the expectations of all of their board members. That doesn't mean they all achieved all those expectations, but they will work very diligently to do what boards would like to see done. But in order to improve, they need to know why. So if there's an area of concern, please take the time to explain what the concern is so that the superintendent can then address it. I am sure all of you in your professional lives, when your superior gives you feedback, it's very helpful to have specific examples that are actionable, that you can then do something to correct. So please keep that in mind. So as you think about this, it really begins with the district goal setting that typically takes place. I know you do it every year here in late spring, early summer. Action plans are developed by your administration, which is appropriate to move those goals forward. You receive on a quarterly basis, typically in your district. I know all the time you have a lot up on your website as well, on your dashboards, that talk about the progress that's being made. And then we are adding and suggesting very strongly that you have a pre-conference. And all of this, of course, is contained in the booklet I've given you. And that pre-conference really is to do a final review of progress around goals, to settle any questions or concerns either the superintendent may have or the board may have about the evaluation process, to make sure that you have a calendar in place so that the board president should not have to chase board members around like herding cats, which is often the case. I spend a lot of my spare time emailing the board presidents to say, here's who's done it, here's who hasn't done it. Please encourage them to get it in. It's very time consuming. It's not a good utilization of your board president's time. We are working on, but have not yet perfected, the ability for your board president to going to be able to see who's completed that, but we're working on that so that you'd be able to do that without my assistance. The first real step in the process is your superintendent will go in, enter his district goals, and then provide a self-assessment and evidence around the leadership standards. Okay. Once that happens, 48 hours after Dr. Tian hits complete and submit, you will receive an email from me notifying you that it's now open and you will have an opportunity to go in and enter your assessments. We have provided a 48-hour lag time by design between the time the superintendent completes it and the time you are notified for this very reason. We've had so many superintendents who complete it and then call and say, I meant to say I should have added, I had this extra thought, and so in order to enable you to go back in, we've allowed 48 hours after you hit complete and submit that you'll be able to go back in and add anything that you want to or add another piece of evidence as a link, just because superintendents, again, want to do it very thoughtfully and carefully, and we found that 48 hours really does help superintendents. So you have to hook that into your calendar as well. Okay? Once all of the board members have completed it, I hit a button that compiles the documentation and I return it to the district. It is a completely safe and secure process. It's also anonymous. All I can see is your last name as a board member and the date you complete your evaluation. I can't see your individual entry. I don't want to see any of them. We're not in the business of evaluating superintendents. We are in the business of assisting you in that process. So you need to be comfortable and understand that I am not reading those documents or their individual entries. It's of no interest to me. I don't live here, work here. I'm not a board member here, but I can help you to it. Once you have that compilation, the board obviously can meet, develop a summary document with that summary document. That is then gets shared with your superintendent. The law says that the full majority of the board who are non-conflicted must meet to review the evaluation with the superintendent. That's a really important component for this reason. The written report needs to reflect the will of the majority, so it should be written in the majority perspective and voice. But the minority rights are protected because if you have a minority perspective on a particular area of it, that meeting allows you as a board member to say, here's what my concern is. And again, it goes to superintendents needing to know what every single member of the board thinks. On the other hand, the evaluation, as with all you do, is a majority document and needs to reflect the voice of the majority of the board. So that meeting with the full board is critically important because it preserves the rights of the minority voice to be heard. If there is one, there may not be, but if it is, there is, it's important for you to hear that, okay? The board president dates and signs it, the superintendent dates and signs it. Typically, the board copy is kept with your board counsel, and the superintendent gets a copy for his or her personnel file. When we did this, we looked at evaluation tools from all across the country. We worked with NJASA for about 2.5 years it took us to get this accomplished. This is part one, what you would think of from the old eval, but it is the same in this new one. It's the progress toward achievement of district goals. It's absolutely identical to what you have seen in the past. There are new rating scales for the leadership skills portion that are exemplary, proficient, area for growth. It more closely mirrors the kind of evaluation that teachers and supervisors and principals under Achieve NJ use, the kind of tools. There is also a category not observed. For those of you who are new board members who may not be comfortable that you have enough information or have sat in your seat long enough to do a thorough and complete evaluation, you may check simply not observed. It's neither a positive nor a negative. It simply says you have insufficient information against which to make an informed judgment. And we would encourage you to use that if indeed, any of you to use that, if indeed you believe that that's best. The new leadership standards, of course, are based on the ISLIC standards, which were originally created way back in 2003 or 4. They were updated again in 2015, and we believe that they really do reflect the qualities and values of leadership work that's integral to student success. And they work closely aligned to areas where the board needs to identify what it should be doing as well. Okay? So the evaluation standards are in the area of mission, vision, and core values, and then governance, ethics, professional norms, operations and management, which incorporates policy, facilities, finance, transportation, if you have buses, curriculum assessment and school improvement, again, that's curriculum and instruction, community affair, equity, and family engagement. That has become such a huge piece of the work that gets done in schools. And then professional capacity, community of school district personnel, again, around professional development, all based on the idea that we're encouraging our staff and our kids to be lifelong learners and to engage in continuous improvement. And so part of the model design for this was that boards and superintendents should be continuously learning together. And so that's why we have made this change. Here's a sample, and in your booklet, the entire evaluation is on page 12. You can look at it if you choose. But please note that the rubric with the that goes with the ratings are different for each standard. They're not identical. So you're going to have to read the rubric for each of the standards because they are specific to each of those 6 standards. They're not the same anymore. Okay? We're now asking you additionally to not only evaluate the indicators, but then to provide an overall rating in each of the standards with the notion that by evaluating the standards first, the indicators, it will help you to come to a more reasoned overall standard of each, assessment of each standard. Okay? So there's the standard name, there's the standard itself. There is the rating scale, and the rubric, the definitions are different for each. And then there are resources to consider. This is something we've added for board members. Oftentimes when board members look at a standard, they might say, well, how will I know that this has been accomplished? How will I know how to assess this? So for each of the standards, we have provided suggested resources. So for this one, you might look to communications regarding your vision statement, regarding strategic planning, how district initiatives are tied to your vision and tied to your goals. So we've tried to provide resources for each of the 6 standards. And then there will be the superintendent's selected evidence for each standard next. And that's where you would find those links that you can click on while you're actually doing the evaluation to look at in case you're uncertain. Okay? And we've just mocked this up just to indicate for you some of what it would look like. Again, you know, this individual, indicator 1, gave an exemplary, proficient to the next several, and then lastly, on the last one, proficient. So we believe that by having you look at that grid before you do the overall rating, it will help to focus board members, because we found that sometimes board members' comments and overall ratings weren't tied to the indicators. So this was a way of trying to help board members to really focus in on the standard itself and the work that's been done, and then give an overall rating that is justified. So, for example, I have seen board members over time who may have rated a standard like that and then marked unsatisfactory, okay? Which would be very difficult to justify if you looked at the grid and said, okay, what's a rational assessment of the overall work in this standard? Because they're rating something else rather than the overall standard. So we thought this would be a very helpful approach to do. There is the area to use for supporting remarks. We've also developed a new annual performance report template. We found that some boards were really struggling with the overall summary document, and we're having difficulty putting that together. So if you look on pages 13 to 16, we've created a new template for you that you can use as a guide. It is provided to you and would be provided to you in a Word document available online. So if the board chooses to use that when you write your overall summary, you can use this template if you would find that helpful. Okay? And so we've eliminated those questions that used to be part 3 at the end. And now you can see how there are no open-ended questions left. But we think that this would be more helpful. Okay? The board and the superintendent meet to discuss. Again, all of this needs to be completed by July 1, signed and put to bed. As with all other certified staff in the school district, the superintendent has 10 teaching staff days, which is the actual language in the code, to attach to the evaluation any kind of documentation that he or she feels would help to clarify, elucidate, illuminate the evaluation. The board should be notified if the superintendent is attaching additional documentation to the evaluation. It's the same for all staff members in a district. You don't get to say yes or no, it gets attached to the evaluation, but you should know and be able to read whatever was attached. That's pretty unusual for a superintendent, but occasionally superintendents do attach that. So you want to make sure that you're giving your board enough time to create a quality evaluation, to be fair, to reflect on the big picture, and to comply with these regulations. So we strongly suggest, do not wait till June 1st to begin with this process. The end of the year is filled with celebratory events, the kind of which you sort of did tonight in brief, which was very wonderful to see. And congratulations to all the parents and grandparents that are here. You should be so proud of your kids. It's so nice to see when you don't have kids this age anymore, to see the kids do it. But please, enable yourselves to celebrate those things at the end of the year by not having this hanging over your heads, because it has to be done by July 1st. Okay? We've talked a little bit about the pre-conference as a new piece. On page 5, there's a sample evaluation calendar. I strongly urge the board to set that calendar up and set deadlines so that all board members are on the same page and can meet those expectations. Some of you who have to do too. You want to make sure that you have that in place. Okay? Just in terms of consideration, this is an ongoing year-long process. This is not something that just happens at the end of the year that, oh my gosh, we have to do. You need to think of it overall, the course of the entire year. It's a full year's worth of performance. Developing a systematic way to retain evidence is something we've suggested to superintendents. A lot of them just keep links, a lot of them keep a file. It depends on how you want to do it, but it makes it much easier for you in the end. The progress on updates and two-way communication through this process are critical. And then I would just remind all board members that it really is the way that you hold the district accountable for performance. And so making sure that you complete it is very, very important beyond, my telling you that it's a statutory requirement and that CUSAC has it. It's important because it's a good communications tool to talk about what did we accomplish, where are we going, what else do we need to do. It really begins and provides the basis for the beginning of next year's goal setting. Whether you're pulling your goals from the strategic plan or whether you're setting them annually, it doesn't matter. This does provide the basis for that beginning piece to goal setting. In terms of online access, it's available at www.njsba. On the front page, bottom right-hand side, it says evaluations. All of you have a username. Your username is your email address that you have registered with your district. If you can't remember your password, which would be me, and you don't have a little slip of paper in your desk drawer, don't tell my IT people I do this, you can just reset it, okay? Every year. You don't have to try to remember what your password is if you don't go on often or frequently to look at that, okay? And then the last piece to the superintendent's evaluation you may think is very bizarre that I have this up here, but it is the board self-evaluation. You hold the superintendent accountable for his or her performance, and then you do a board evaluation to hold yourselves accountable for your performance to help you identify what you can do more effectively, what you did particularly well, where perhaps, there are areas where you'd like to improve your performance to better enable you to support the initiatives of the district. So comply by July 1 with the superintendent's evaluation deadline, but make sure that you also complete, and your board has for years, I've brought in your self-eval on a regular basis, so it is a practice. It's not required by law, certainly, but it is a best practice, and so we would encourage you to continue to do that. Here are also some of the online resources that you will find at the superintendent evaluation site. We have an FAQ. We have tips for how to develop those evaluation links for superintendents. Those are for SUPs. Particularly, there's a copy of this guidebook on there as well electronically so that you can do it. We have a webinar that we just re-recorded this morning. We archive it for a whole year, but that'll be available online as well to hear other FSRs talk about what I'm talking about tonight. And then there's also the evaluation available in a PDF as a resource if you want to print it out ahead of time to review it. Oftentimes I have board members say, well, it's a lot to read online and so forth. You can print it out in the PDF. And then if you want to write down your comments ahead of time electronically somewhere and then copy and paste it into the eval when you go in, you certainly can do that. You do not have to do it all in one sitting. You can just click where you stopped, and when you go back in, it'll take you to where you left off. But please do not hit complete and submit if you want to go back in. If you hit complete and submit, you will be locked out. Then you will have to call me, which is not a problem for me, but it will wipe out I'll have it open for you, but when it's opened, okay, which as a board member could be very frustrating. So please do not hit complete and submit, and or please make a copy of your submission before you submit it and keep it so that if for some reason it were to get wiped out, you at least have a copy of your work. I don't want to see anybody get really frustrated by the process. So we're continuing to try to upgrade it and improve it and make it more user-friendly. But that's still a little bit of a problem. If we go to reopen you, it clears it out. So, and that's for your security, so people aren't double and triple entering things. Okay? Questions that I can answer for you, because I know you have a full agenda. No? Everything's comfortable? You guys are never this quiet. Eerily quiet. So, every year I come in and I always do the code of ethics, and you all have copies of the code of ethics, and I'm going to give you a folder with all of the materials on the code of ethics that you have. But what I would like to do tonight, just because I like to end on a high point, is to show you a little something. This has sound, right?
Mike.
Yes. Thank you. Send him in, please. Dr. Whittleson. Hey, Andy, what's going on here today?
Well, I have a pretty serious situation to discuss.
Let's hear it.
Clarence Hopgood talked to me last Sunday after Sunday school. He told me his daughter's bus driver is a reckless driver. He's very concerned about his children's safety. Seems pretty upset.
I wonder who the driver is.
Rusty Simpson.
I'll call our transportation supervisor and ask him to investigate this situation right away.
That would be necessary.
Why not?
I've already done it.
What do you mean?
Well, on Monday, I started my investigation. I followed the driver for 3 days and documented everything.
Did he have any idea you were following him around?
No, oh my, I was very careful. On Monday, I used my daughter's little import job to follow him. And then on Tuesday, I borrowed Lyle Selby's pickup truck. Wednesday, I used the church van to follow him. There's no way he suspected it.
Finding one through the
Now, in my investigation, I clocked that he was speeding 23 times. Yeah, 23. On Monday, he hit a curb so hard it knocked several of the children right out of their seats. Tuesday, he shot by the curb house, even though he could see poor little Harold was chasing after the bus. It's all documented right there.
Wow.
I'll bet you wish you had more board members like me, huh? I take my responsibilities seriously.
I thought this was a wonderful, humorous, obviously, but also way to talk a little bit about ethics and about what the roles of board members are. So just by way of review, what did you think?
He's a passionate individual.
Pardon me?
He's passionate, he takes his job very seriously.
He does take his job very seriously, and I would think that every superintendent would want all their board members to take their work very seriously. Don't you think? Dr. Sadie? They should take it seriously?
Absolutely, and maybe stay within their wheelhouse of responsibilities.
Yes.
That'd be good too.
Okay. So what was the matter with what Andy was doing?
No awareness of the ethics that he was violating every time he opened his mouth.
He was violating the code of ethics, but why? I mean, he was concerned about the kids, right? You all are here, you're volunteers, you care about the children in your community. I know you do. I know most of you, have known most of you. You care deeply about the children of your community. Help me understand what he did that was so egregious. Yes.
Ethics number 3. I will confine my board actions to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and help frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those affected by those plans.
Exactly. This gentleman, while perhaps well-intentioned, was acting way outside the role and violating the code of ethics, okay? As board members, you know you only have authority to do anything in the district when you are sitting in a duly advertised meeting of the board like you are this evening. But individually, your role is not to run the day-to-day operations of the district. So under the code of ethics, a good board member would do what?
Report it.
If you heard that.
Yeah, chain of command, you report it.
Chain of command, you would observe what the parent said, if that was a concern, or you saw it yourself, and then you would notify the superintendent and let the superintendent address it and take care of it. Because he or she is the one responsible for the day-to-day operations of the district. You're a policy-making body, you provide oversight through such things as goal setting and superintendent's evaluation. You ensure that there is a curriculum and instructional program that's aligned to the New Jersey student learning standards and provide the wonderful kinds of co-curricular opportunities that kids so desperately need that educate them as much sometimes as what goes on in the classroom. All right, and then you have two-way communication responsibilities with your community so that you're being transparent and accountable to those community members. Okay? But I just wanted to take a few moments to do that. I thought it was a lot more interesting than listening to me talk, perhaps about the code of ethics, which I have done for years, and I find it very valuable, but I think seeing someone else you can laugh, but we don't have to make these things up. These things actually do happen. You've seen them happen. One of the cases that you'll read in the folder that I'm going to leave with you tonight is about two board members in a district who decided that there was one of their employees who was working outside of their district without permission to work outside of their district, had a second job. And so they undertook an investigation of that by themselves. They investigated, it was found to have no basis in fact, and then when they didn't like how it was turning out, they then called the county prosecutor to further investigate what had already been. So that's never the role of a Board of Education member, and in fact the superintendent was well aware of what the employee was doing, and it was after school hours. People are permitted to have a second job if they so choose to do so, as long as it doesn't interfere with their regular work day and their regular work schedule. But these board members took it upon themselves to act way outside, as you said, their wheelhouse. So the Code of Ethics really does provide a framework. I'm waiting for our legislative brethren down the street from us in Trenton to agree to live by a set of these. Board members have agreed to it for years and years. I'm not holding my breath either. But it's something I think that your community needs to know that you should all be very proud of as well, because I think it speaks very highly of the kinds of people the board members are. So thank you very much. As always, it's a pleasure to be here in Somerville. Your kids are just adorable. Just so nice to see. So thank you very much.
Resolved that the Board of Education approves the following rates for substitute teachers effective April 1st, 2019 as follows. Somerville High School, $105 per day. Somerville Middle School, $120 per day. Vanderveer School, preschool through 5, $135 per day. There will be an increase in the rate by $10 per day for a substitute who works 40 cumulative days within a school year. Number 2, award Apple device bid to Sycamore. 3, non-public school security aid program. 4 is field trips, and 5 is travel expenditures.
Do we have a second on those two? Second. Thank you, Mr. Quintillo. Any discussion on these items?
Yeah, I have to recuse myself on number 1. So we just set designer on the,
Great. Thank you.
which is taken for that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we have the one abstention. Thank you. Moving on to athletics and student activities, Mr. Sergio.
Yes, we have one resolution, and before, if I may, I just want to agree with Dr. Tina's statements. Guys and dolls, I'm looking forward to seeing that, and Pippin was a fantastic performance. Winter sports are completed, spring sports are now beginning. And with that, I have one resolution. Resolved, this is the Somerville High School Medical Sciences Club. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the newly created Medical Science Club at Somerville High School for the 2018-2019 school year.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Saden. Any discussion? I'd just like to echo Mr. Sergio's sentiments with regards to Pippin. I'd never seen it before. It was a little odd, I thought, but the kids did an awesome job, whether they were on the stage or behind the stage or in the pit or in the orchestra. Everybody did a great job. It was really neat to see some of the things that went on. So,
And there was one actress in the ensemble that was
who would that be? She was all right. Listen, I want to tell you, I think everybody did a great job, but the young lady who was on the ring, who was like flipping around, that was amazing. I was like, what the heck are they doing? She did a great job. So it was awesome all around.
I would like to also agree with that, and my hat is off to the staff, because having done something like that as a teacher myself, Ms. Terranova and Ms. G and the band director and Jeff Carlson, set designer, and I know what it takes to herd the cats that are these incredibly talented and vivacious children from our high school, and to be able to get them to perform at the level that they did takes a great deal of talent. I also had the opportunity to sit for quite a while with these children after the play, and I just have to say publicly that I think that we as a community are doing a pretty darn good job of raising children. They were all from different homes, some from Branchburg, some from Somerville. They were polite, they were open and honest with each other in a way that traveling across the country, as I have an opportunity to do and work with schools, I don't see very often. This is a very unique town, and I just am honored to know the children that Somerville teachers and parents are working to raise.
And Dr. Saban had the opportunity to witness the dance-off that the kids do after the play, the boys against the girls firsthand, because she was gracious enough to host the cast party after, which I know the kids had a good time, because I know my daughter did. So thank you for that. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions?
Yeah.
Yep, I got it. Thank you. One opposed.
I am opposed because these are the curriculum items, right?
No, that is athletic item. Yes. Yep. And we're moving on to curriculum now. All right, thank you. Moving on to curriculum. Ms. Van Horn.
Okay, it's recommended that item 1 through 3 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Number 1, harassment, intimidation, and bullying report. 2, 2019 special education summer extended school year programs for K through 8. And 3, Somerville Middle School before school Spanish enrichment program.
Thank you. May I have a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Any discussion? May I have a roll call? Mr. Boyce, please.
Yes. Ms. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mrs. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo.
Yes.
Dr. Saden.
Yes.
Mrs. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
It is recommended that items 4 and 5 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Number 4, 2019 Somerville High School summer programs, and 5, 2019 special education summer extended school year programs for 9 through 12.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any discussion on these items? Mr. Boyce, may I have a roll call, please?
Miss Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mrs. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo.
Yes.
Dr. Saden.
Yes.
Mrs. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to personnel.
Pardon me, Derek.
Yep.
Before we move on to personnel, I know we're not doing board reports tonight, but may I just comment on last night's borough meeting?
Can you bring that up under new business? if
Sure
you
can.
please? Thank you.
Okay, personnel, PS grade 8. Resolved that the Board of Education approve and accept the following appointments upon recommendation of superintendent of schools. Appointments and salaries are contingent upon verified documentation. Number 1, to approve the appointment of Nicholas Cesare to complete his 20 hours practicum placement for teaching English as a foreign language. Number 2, to approve the appointment of Johanna Santana in position of teacher of Spanish at Somerville Middle School. Number 3, to approve the newly created instructional assistant position at Somerville Middle School. Number 4, to approve the appointment of Patrick Manna to the position of instructional assistant at Somerville Middle School. Number 5, to approve the appointment of the listed staff members for curriculum writing to revise the K through 5 writing units.
Thank you. May I have a motion on those items, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Shugil. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Van Horn. Any discussion? Roll call, Mr. Boyce, please.
Miss Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mrs. Olson.
No.
Mr. Puntillo.
Yes.
Dr. Saden.
Yes.
Mrs. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
And the no was because we're planning, we're involved with curriculum and some instructional communication stuff. But we will call those.
So noted. Thank you.
Resolved for 9 through 12 that the Board of Education approve and/or accept the following appointments upon recommendation of superintendent of schools. Appointments and salaries contingent upon verified documentation. Number 6, to approve the appointment of Karina Parcio to the position of advisor for the newly created Medical Science Club at Somerville High School. Number 7, to approve the appointment of Erin Creighton to the leave replacement position of teacher of physical education at Somerville High School. Number 8, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals to the position of volunteer at Somerville High School. Number 9, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals to the position of substitute teacher. And number 10, to approve the appointment of Jason Keller to the position of assistant baseball coach at Somerville High School.
Thank you. Can we have a motion on those items, please?
So moved.
Ms. Van Horn, may I have a second. Thank you, Mr. Shugil. Any discussion?
Just excited about item number 6. Medical Sciences Club.
Any other discussion? Mr. Boyce, roll call, please.
Miss Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mrs. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo.
Yes.
Dr. Saden.
Yes.
Mrs. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to old business. Is there any old business this evening? No? All right. May I have a motion to close old business, please?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. New business.
I'll take new business. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things regarding the town council meeting last night. Just for people to know that the rec sports registration closes this Friday. So any of the kids that want to get involved in soccer, t-ball, etc., please make sure you sign up by Friday. Also, we have the upcoming St. Patrick's Day Parade, and just for anyone that has kids that need to get to sporting events and so forth, make sure you know that there will be road closures, as well as the upcoming Memorial Day Parade and bike races, as well as the 5K routes. So kids that have sports, spring sports, you need to get out, you get trapped in, the roads are closed, the routes are available online.
And if I may answer that, as far as the St. Patrick's Day Parade, I don't know about the middle school, but the Somerville High School band will be participating in that. I know the middle school,
Yeah.
so they will be participating in the St. Patrick's Day Parade along with the Memorial Day Parade as well.
Correct. One last thing, just for a community outreach, that tomorrow night, the New Jersey Transit officials and State Representative Andrew Zwicker will be meeting at 6:30 in the waiting room of the Division Street train station. Anybody that is interested in that for any commuter reason should definitely check it out. That's all.
Thank you. Any other new business? No. May I have a motion to close new business, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Shugil. May I have a second? Second. Mr. Carlson, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. And we're now open to the public.
Someone else? I was here, I think in last August. Mike Merchant, 131 Auto Road, Branchford. I think I was here in August talking about it would be nice to have the board meetings videotaped and archived. You started doing that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The one suggestion I have for that is on the district homepage. There's no immediate reference to any videos, and when you go on the drop-down menu of the Board of Education, where you find things like the agendas and the minutes, there is no link to the videotape within the Board of Education.
We're still tweaking it all.
Okay.
Thank you.
That would be, that would make it really fantastic. No problem. Thank you. I was going to talk about something else, but it's in a long meeting, so.
Thank you. Anyone else for the public?
Yes.
Carol Cabor, 964 Glen Avenue, North Brunswick, New Jersey. I work here as a guidance counselor at the high school. I'd like to read a statement to you, members of the board tonight, and I'll have a copy for you that I'll present at the end of my reading. It's been a very important time for New Jersey workers. As many of you already know, Governor Murphy, with the assistance and support of the legislature, passed an expansion of the Family Leave Act, giving the workers of New Jersey expanded leave for the birth of a baby and or to care for their ailing relatives. Not only does it provide for job protection, but perhaps more importantly, it provides for peace of mind. And it's a generous, compassionate act signaling that caring about the workers of our state is paramount. I wish I could say the same about the leadership in Somerville. A couple of weeks ago, many staff members were told about a new policy regarding our unused sick time. Whether it came from the Board of Education or the Superintendent of Schools is not clear. However, what is clear is that the principals in each building were directed to request a doctor's note every time a staff member that has more than 5 days out. They need to provide a doctor's note going forward. And this total also includes family illness days. We were told that if we could not produce the note, we would be docked a day's pay. Not substitutes pay as it used to be, but a full day's pay. This feels particularly harsh for a variety of reasons. Besides medical personnel, flight attendants, educators come in direct contact with thousands of germs every day. And trust me, we don't go looking for them, but our occupation puts us at greater risk of contracting a variety of illnesses and consequently the need to take sick days. We are currently in the midst of flu season, and we have staff members who have been out for a solid week with the flu. Establishing and enforcing this new policy at this time is both insensitive and it's unkind. In addition, each time we see a doctor, there's an out-of-pocket cost. In my case, I was out for one sick day. I contracted a stomach virus. I couldn't leave the house to see a doctor. I needed 24 hours to let it run its course, and I was back the next day. With the new policy, I am now forced to make an appointment with my doctor, which would have been the next day. Not only would it cost me $75 since I had not met my deductible, but it would also prevent me from returning to work as quickly as possible. And every time that we see a doctor, there's an out-of-pocket cost. And here's the catch-22. Using our health insurance when we absolutely don't need to, it's not necessary, only contributes to the cost of rising insurance premiums. So we all end up paying more. And there are other costs that are not necessarily easily seen. The true measure of an organization can be gauged in many different ways. It's not only the bottom line that matters all the time. It's the treatment of your employees that will be appreciated the most. Doing so with kindness, with sensitivity, and with compassion are qualities that all of us should strive towards in our daily lives as well as in our workplace environments. And this new dictate doesn't feel like it's coming from a place of compassion or understanding. It feels punitive. And it imposes hardships, both financial and emotional. And I sure hope it's not arbitrary or capricious. And by that I mean that every administrator, every supervisor, and the superintendent of schools himself must be held to the same standard. You're out for 5 days, a doctor's note is required, and if not, you get docked a day's pay. But there are other models that can be used if attendance abuse is suspected. How about the superintendent of schools discussing concerns with the individual in question? I admit that even this can be a tricky conversation. Many people do not want to, nor have to, share the protected health information with others. And quite frankly, HIPAA laws protect that information in many different ways. But it's a start. And please don't place the principals in a position of policing their staff that they work so closely with. They have much more important work to do on a daily basis. And here's another model. It's called trust. Trust your employees to know when they need to take a personal illness day or a family illness day. We are adults, and as such, we know if and when we need to visit the doctor. The trust model ensures that the leadership has the employees back, and this new policy doesn't feel that way. So I am requesting, kindly, respectfully, that the board with the superintendent of schools revisit this policy. I know that you can develop a better one that comes from a position of true concern for your employees and not the bottom line. We look forward to hearing from you regarding this concern, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'll give it to each of you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yep. Denise Lang, 201 Grandview Drive, Branchburg, New Jersey. I wanted to follow up Carol's statement and also talk about, it was interesting to watch Mrs. Thornton's presentation from the School Board Association. And so I pulled up the professional standards for educational leaders that she referenced in her presentation. And one section of that was, why do educational leaders need new standards now? And one paragraph said that, and I just want to quote it, I want to make sure I find it, read it accurately. Educators have a better understanding of how and in what ways effective leadership contributes to student achievement. An expanding base of knowledge from research and practice shows that educational leaders exert influence on student achievement by creating challenging, but also caring and supportive conditions conducive to each student's learning. They relentlessly develop and support teachers, create positive working conditions, effectively allocate resources, construct appropriate organizational policies and systems, and engage in other deep and meaningful work outside of the classroom that has a powerful impact on what happens inside it. So I just want to reiterate what Ms. Kapoor said, that the new policy feels harsh, insensitive, and incompassionate. And to go down to one specific standard, standard number 6. So standard number 6 is professional capacity of school personnel. And one portion of that is letter H. And letter H of that educational leadership standard is promote the personal and professional health, well-being, and work-life balance of faculty and staff. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Michael Pepe, 121 Rehill Avenue. 2 quick points. One, I just wanted to compliment the board on raising the substitute pay rates. I think it's a great thing. I've been in that line for a while now and taught and had substitutes come over for me, and that's wonderful to see. My other thing was a quick question. I understand you can't answer it necessarily, but I noticed there was some discussion about the different ways of voting, the voice vote, the roll call vote, and I'm not sure what's required and when, but I noticed on a lot of these items, you're voting on a lot of things at the same time. So if someone was to vote yes and no on certain things, I remember last week there was there were only a couple of members present. I think there were 6 members present, and there was an instance where I think one member was intended to vote against one thing, and they voted no kind of against everything, which may have left the board a little short on the majority of the full board, which is required in certain cases. I'm just curious about, because I noticed that's different this year, so just wondering.
Anyone else?
That's all right.
Terry Fabiano, 6 Hackberry Place, Leominster, New Jersey. I just want to reiterate what Mr. Board and Ms. said. We're ready for positive. We're just ready for positive. The timing of this does seem punitive, maybe it isn't, but it just feels that way. We're ready to see the glass half full. We're ready to reward the 85% of us that don't abuse the attendance policy and maybe individually speak to the people that do. Because I know in my office, there has been someone sick since Thanksgiving. There's always someone with a cold, there's been teachers with flus, and I say to them, take a sick day, that's why you have it, because you're going to get the rest of us sick. We're in an environment where there's thousands of children touching doorknobs, coughing. It's just, people are going to get sick. They're going to get sick, and I think most of us do a really nice job of not abusing the sick time and take it seriously, take our job seriously. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Good evening, Pat Brand, 201 Skokie Lane, Somerset, New Jersey, President of the Somerville Education Association. And I thought that was a fantastic presentation on the middle school. That was really nice. And one thing that really stood out for me was that the teachers and the educational staff at the middle school make it such a welcoming environment. But I do have to say that the middle school itself is probably not a very welcoming environment for instructional teachers and aides, because 4 have left since September. 4 teachers have left the middle school since September. 1 retired, 3 left. Okay, that's not very welcoming. And if like the young lady said from the School Boards Association, that everything does boil down to the superintendent, right now morale's in the tank. And if it does boil down to you, Dr. Teehan, then let's work on this about it. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, can I have a motion to close public portion, please? Thank you. May I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Second was Mr. Carlson. Did he leave? Did Mr. Pepe leave? The board is going to go into executive session to discuss confirmed HIB case number 2018-2019:3 SMS and negotiations. The minutes of the executive session, to the extent permitted by law, will be made available to the public once the issues are resolved. Subject to confidentiality requirements, action may be taken. May I have a motion for executive session, please? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Young. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved at 8:25.